What would you do if you walked into your home? Only to find your photo on the wall, your clothes burned, your name whispered like a ghost in the wind. Your friends mourn you. Your family has buried you. A tombstone marks your grave. But you're alive. This isn't fiction. It's the real story of a man who was declared dead, buried, and came back. This is the story of Ayan Baratu, the man who returned after his own funeral. It all began in a remote Romanian village blanketed by mist and silence. The kind of place where time itself feels slower and every face is familiar. Ayan Baratu was a man of few words, a humble construction worker in his early 50s, known for showing up early, leaving late, and keeping mostly to himself. On the morning of January 7th, 2014, Ayan left his small wooden house at dawn, as usual, wearing his heavy winter coat, carrying his lunch wrapped in newspaper. But that day, he never showed up at the construction site, and he didn't come home that night. At first, his absence wasn't alarming. Ayan was known to take occasional trips for work, disappearing for 2 or 3 days without warning. But when a full week passed with no word, no calls, and no sightings, his neighbors began to whisper. His family filed a missing person report, and search teams were dispatched into surrounding woods, rivers, and train stations. Days turned into weeks. Hope turned into dread. Then, nearly a month later, a body was discovered near the banks of the Alt River. Bloated, frozen, face unrecognizable, but wearing clothes nearly identical to Ayan's, including his oval hat. The authorities acted quickly. The region was known for its harsh winters and frequent cases of accidental hypothermia. A local officer called Ayan's family to identify the body. Though the face was too distorted to confirm with certainty, the physical features matched: height, build, even a scar above the right eyebrow. Ayan's wife wept as she confirmed the clothes. The coroner issued a death certificate. A modest funeral was held 3 days later, with villagers gathering around a wooden casket lowered into frozen ground. Candles were lit, flowers placed. The earth was closed over what they believed was Ayan Baratu's final resting place. But while the village mourned, somewhere far away in a small border town near Hungary, a dazed, dirty, and disoriented man walked barefoot into a roadside clinic. His face was scratched, his speech was slow, and he appeared severely dehydrated. He carried no wallet, no phone, just a Romanian ID card tucked in his inner coat pocket. The name on the card? Ayan Baratu. The nurse on duty nearly laughed. "That's impossible," she said. "He's dead." But the man insisted he had no memory of how he got there. He had woken up in an abandoned train car, surrounded by empty cans. The hospital ran a biometric scan. The results triggered an alert in the government system. According to the national database, Ayan Baratu was legally deceased. Yet here he was, speaking, breathing, and completely confused. When police arrived, they questioned him for hours. His answers were hazy. He remembered leaving for work. Then a flash, maybe a blow to the head, and darkness. The next memory he had was waking up alone in a place he didn't recognize. It was as if weeks of his life had been erased. The authorities were baffled. But one thing was clear: this man was not a ghost. When Ayan's family received a call from the authorities, they thought it was a cruel prank. His wife collapsed. His brother screamed at the officer, insisting that Ayan had been buried. They had the grave, the headstone, the tears. But the officer spoke calmly. "We confirmed his identity through biometrics. He's alive and he's asking for you." The next day, the family traveled to the clinic, unsure what they would find. When they walked into the sterile hospital room, their breath caught. There, sitting upright on the bed with 4 lines in his arm, was a man they had mourned. The reunion wasn't joyful. It was haunting. His wife stood frozen, unable to move. His daughter began crying uncontrollably. Ayan, still weak, reached out his hand and whispered her name. But instead of relief, his family recoiled. The man they buried had brought them closure. This was something else. "How do we know it's really him?" his brother asked. "Maybe he faked it. Maybe it's a twin." But tests confirmed his DNA. He had no twin. It was him, body and soul. And yet, something about him was off. His eyes seemed older, his voice quieter, as if he had walked through death itself. Back in the village, the news spread like wildfire. "Ion has returned," whispered the children. "The dead man walks again," muttered the elders. Some believed he had been resurrected. Others believed it was black magic. The priest, unnerved, refused to speak of it. The grave was still there, the funeral still fresh in everyone's minds. What did it mean for a man to be buried and then come home? Some villagers refused to look him in the eye. Others came to touch him, as if confirming he wasn't a hallucination. Ion didn't know what to say. He didn't even feel alive. As the days passed, Ion tried to reintegrate into his life. But life had moved on. His employer had hired someone else. His belongings had been donated. His wife, in deep grief, had already begun the slow process of rebuilding her life, emotionally, mentally, even financially. Now, everything was thrown into chaos again. Ion didn't blame them. He, too, was haunted. He began to suffer from vivid nightmares, of being trapped underground, of voices calling him, of being pulled by hands he couldn't see. He started avoiding mirrors, not out of fear, but because he didn't recognize the face staring back. Ion wanted answers. Why had the police identified a body as is when it wasn't? Where had he been all those weeks? He returned to the morgue, demanding to see the reports. The pathologist showed him photos of the body they buried, twisted, waterlogged, but undeniably dressed like him. Then, something struck him, the scar above the eyebrow. It was on the left side in the photo, but his scar was on the right. It wasn't him. It never was. He hadn't returned from the dead. Someone else had died wearing his clothes. But who was it, and why did they look so much like him? Disturbed by the morgue photos, Ion began digging deeper. Literally, one night, under the cover of fog, he returned to the cemetery with a flashlight and shovel. The graveyard was silent. Only the sound of distant wolves echoed to the forest beyond. With trembling hands, he uncovered the fresh mound of dirt marking his own grave. Every strike of the shovel felt like cutting into a dream. Finally, the wooden coffin appeared. He opened it. The stench hit him first, then the sight, a face, swollen and decomposed, but eerily familiar. Not a stranger, not a twin, but a mirror of himself. Ion stumbled backward in horror, almost dropping his flashlight. The man in the coffin didn't just look like him. He was him. Same jawline, same hair, even the chipped front tooth. But how could that be? He was looking at his own corpse. Panic overtook him. He covered the grave, ran home, and locked his doors. He didn't sleep that night. He barely breathed. Was it a doppelganger? A clone? Some kind of elaborate identity theft? His mind swirled with questions that had no rational answers. And deep inside, something darker began to fester. The sinking feeling that maybe he wasn't Ion Baratu. Ion returned to hospital where he had been treated, demanding to see his intake records. The nurse, confused, provided the files. According to the documents, he had no vital signs when first found. No pulse, no blood pressure. And yet, a few minutes later, he gasped and came back to life on the examination table. The doctor even wrote a note. Subject appears clinically dead for several minutes before spontaneous revival. No one had mentioned this to him before. Why? Because no one could explain it. But Ion remembered something now. Just a flash. Darkness. Cold. And then the whisper of a name that wasn't his. Unable to explain the corpse or his own mysterious return, Ion traveled to the only place that might help. A monastery deep in the Carpathian Mountains. The monks that were said to have ancient knowledge, the kind modern science scoffs at. One monk listened quietly as Ion spoke. When he finished, the monk only asked one question. Have you ever wondered if the life you're living now was meant for someone else? Ion didn't answer. He couldn't. The monk gave him a single piece of advice. Do not search for the man in the grave. Let the dead keep their secrets. But Ion couldn't let it go. He began having visions. Waking dreams where he saw himself, dressed in black, walking through fog toward a town that wasn't his. He started writing things in a language he didn't know. Once, He woke up in the woods, barefoot, surrounded by animal bones. He didn't remember how he got there. Something or someone was leaking through. It was as if the man in the grave was still alive, but inside him, his reflection would twitch when he didn't. His voice began to sound strange, almost layered. And then one night his wife screamed, "You're not my husband." Her words cut deeper than any wound. Ion stood there, stunned, while his wife backed away in terror. "What do you mean I'm not your husband?" he asked, but even his voice sounded foreign to him. Her eyes filled with tears. "You look like him, but your mannerisms, your silence, the way you watch me when you think I'm not looking, it's wrong. I don't know what you are, but you're not Ion." The silence that followed was unbearable. That night, she left with their daughter. Ion sat in the dark, haunted by her words, and whispered to no one, "Then who am I?" The isolation grew. Friends stopped visiting. Even strangers crossed the street to avoid him. Ion wandered through his empty house, searching for traces of the man he used to be. He found his old journals, filled with handwriting that looked like his, but wasn't. The entries talked about dreams of fire, voices from beneath the earth, and cryptic mentions of a gate between selves. One passage chilled him. "The only way back is through the grave you came from." He didn't remember writing that. Was it his mind fracturing? Or was there another force, another consciousness, inside him, trying to take control? Desperate, Ion returned to the grave one last time. He brought a recorder, candles, and a mirror. He sat cross-legged before the mound and began to speak. Not to himself, but to the version of him that was buried. "What are you?" he asked the soil. "What do you want?" At first, nothing, just wind and night. But then, the recorder began to hiss. A voice, low, crackling, spoke. "You opened the wrong door." Ion stared in horror as the mirror beside him fogged from the inside. Something was pressing against the glass. His own face, smiling, but not the kind of smile that humans wear. Ion fled the cemetery, but the voice followed him. At first, only in dreams, then in waking hours. It whispered doubts, memories that weren't his, childhood games in a town he'd never lived in, a woman's laughter he never heard before. It called itself Alan, and Alan wanted out. Ion began to lose time. An hour here, a night there. He'd wake up to find things moved, clothes changed, food half-eaten. Once, he woke up in a hotel 2 cities away, his pockets full of photographs he didn't recognize. He wasn't just losing his identity. He was being overwritten page by page. He sought out a neuroscientist known for studying dissociative phenomena. After hours of testing, the doctor's face turned pale. Your brain scans showed dual activity. 2 centers of self-awareness. Like 2 minds trying to control the same body. She had never seen anything like it. Ion asked what could cause such a thing. Her answer was hesitant. Severe trauma, maybe, or metaphysical interference. I don't know. Ion asked the final question. Can one personality consume the other? She nodded slowly. Yes, if it grows stronger. Ion left the lab with a new fear, not of death, but of vanishing from his own life. He decided to record everything. His thoughts, his actions. He wore a body cam 24/7. At night, he would watch the footage. That's when the horror deepened. The recordings showed him talking to people he had no memory of meeting, visiting locations he swore he never entered. In one chilling clip, he looked directly into the lens and said, "He's almost ready." Ion rewound the clip over and over, trying to recall that moment. Nothing. It wasn't him. It was Alan. And Alan now had a voice, a presence. Sometimes, Ion could hear him laughing from inside his skull. With time running out, Ion sought help from a woman known for her occult knowledge, a psychic who had once helped the police locate missing persons. She agreed to see him. During their session, she touched his forehead and immediately recoiled. "You're not alone," she gasped. "You carry a shadow, one that crossed back with you." She warned him. "You were meant to die, but something else crawled back through that crack in death's wall, and it wants your skin." She gave him one final warning. "Do not sleep tonight. If you do, he'll finish the crossing." That night, Ion locked every door and window. He surrounded himself with lights and mirrors, afraid of the dark and himself. But sleep is a cruel master. Despite his efforts, exhaustion overtook him. In his dreams, he stood in a hallway of doors, all marked with names. Only one door was open. The name on it read, Alan Baratu. He stepped through. Inside, it was pitch black, except for one thing, a coffin. He opened it. Inside was himself, smiling, eyes wide open. The figure sat up and whispered, "You had your turn," and then lunged forward. Ion screamed himself awake, but the room wasn't his. He was now in a different house, different furniture, a different city skyline through the window. He ran to a mirror and saw himself, but the scar above the eyebrow had switched sides, just like the corpse in the coffin. He wasn't Ion anymore, not completely. The change was done. When he answered a phone that rang beside him, a voice said, "Welcome back, Alan. You've been gone a long time." And the terrifying part? He smiled, not out of confusion, but as if he remembered it all. The funeral, the swap, the waiting. He didn't hang up. He just said, "I'm home." Some say death is the end. For Ion Baratu, it was the beginning of something else entirely. A man buried, a man returned, but not the same. Those who knew him say the man walking now is colder, quieter, more watchful, as if learning to wear a body like clothes. The grave remains sealed, but sometimes children dare each other to visit it at night. They claim they hear scratching sounds beneath the soil, as if someone or something is still trying to get out. So the next time you feel a chill while looking in the mirror, ask yourself, is that really you looking back?